Hi, today I am going to talk about metabolism. This video will be an introduction to metabolism, and I have to tell you that I'm super excited about making this video today for two reasons. The first reason is that metabolism is hard, and I have a training as a geologist, and secondly, with chemistry. But for me to learn the biology of metabolism has always been one of my bigger struggles with teaching this course. And each and every year, I feel like I get a little bit more knowledgeable, but I am feeling much better about it right now in my knowledge and my ability to help you understand metabolism as well. So with that, we will start talking about energy. So energy is what we get as a product when we eat our food. And that's why we eat food. I mean, it gives us nutrients, but it ultimately gives us the energy to make our body function. And the end products of the burning of the fuel from the foods that we eat are always carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Now, we can get energy from carbohydrates and sugars. We can also get energy from fats, and we can get energy from protein. 90% of the energy needs that our body has comes from the combustion of glucose in our body. Now, when I say combustion of glucose in our body, that sounds kind of scary, but it's really not, because our body has a really good way of controlling the steps that result in this reaction. So we start with glucose. Glucose is a 6-carbon sugar. It's considered a reduced form of carbon. And when this reduced form of carbon becomes oxidized, we get energy. Energy is in the form of ATP. And oops, I'm just bringing my pen out here. Sorry about that distraction. Energy is in the form of ATP, and ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, and we will learn a lot more about ATP as we go. But right now I want you to think of ATP as the energy source of our bodies. So again, we can get energy from carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. The body's most desired fuel is glucose from carbohydrates. When it runs out of glucose, it will go to fats to get energy. And lastly, it will rely on proteins. Proteins are not a desirable source of fuel for our bodies, but we can break proteins down and get energy from them. Ultimately, all of the energy that comes from our food originally came from the sun. The ultimate source of all energy that fuels our bodies comes from the sun. And this is why it has to do with the food chain, actually. So the plants will convert sunlight to potential energy and store it in its bonds. And we can either eat the plants ourselves to access that energy, or we can eat animals, like this cow right here, that ate the grass, and we can access the energy that way. We can use that energy to do mechanical work. It can be used to build molecules in our body, and it can be used to break down molecules in our body. So the energy uses in our body is quite varied, but everything ultimately comes from the sun. So, as I mentioned before, carbohydrates are the primary source of energy in our diet, and secondly, we will get energy from lipids. Protein metabolism, which we haven't really talked about metabolism yet, but um, metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions in the body, is only used for energy production if carbohydrate and lipid supply is not adequate. Primaries are, or proteins are mainly used to make molecules in the body that help keep you alive. So I mentioned that metabolism, or the combustion reaction of glucose has to be happening gradually. And it has to be stored in readily accessible forms. And it can be stored in the body either as adipose tissue if it's coming from fat, or as glycogen if it's coming from a carbohydrate source. That's how our body stores. And the energy needs to be used where and when in the body that it's needed. So we are going to talk very briefly about cells. The cells in our body are called eukaryotic cells, as opposed to a bacteria cell, which is a prokaryotic cell. And the cells have a membrane enclosed nucleus containing DNA. So I have an image of the cell here. Here is the nucleus. It contains DNA. It has internal structures, which are organelles. And here are some of the internal structures within there. We have a centrosome, a mitochondria, vacuoles, lysosomes, Golgi apparatus. So those are called organelles. And there's a watery material between the cell membrane and the nucleus, and that's referred to as the cytoplasm. So this right in here is the cytoplasm. One of the metabolism pathways we're going to talk about occurs in the cytoplasm of a cell. And there are also lots of electrolytes and nutrients and many enzymes found in that cytoplasm. And the major one we're going to focus on here is the mitochondria, which is right here. So the cytoplasm has lots of nutrients in it, and enzymes, and some extra amino acids, electrolytes. So the mitochondria is referred to as the powerhouse of the cell. Most of the energy that our body needs, remember ATP is energy, is produced in the mitochondria. And there's a specific part of the mitochondria where the ATP gets made. And there's a specific part of the mitochondria where the citric acid cycle takes place. So let's look at a picture of the mitochondria. There are two membranes. There's the outer membrane, which is this red color here, and the inner membrane, which is kind of squiggly and it's yellow. The citric acid cycle is one of the pathways we're going to learn about, occurs in this mitochondrial matrix. It's a cycle, so I'm just going to represent that as little circles. And the production of ATP occurs specifically at the inner membrane. I don't know what's happening right now. Oh, at the inner membrane, right there. So this is a microscope image of a mitochondria. So a definition of metabolism is the sum of all of the chemical reactions within the body. And we, in our body, will take large molecules and break them down, typically to release energy from food, that is catabolism. And we will take those smaller molecules and use them to build things up. And that's called anabolism. So you can see catabolism takes larger molecules and breaks them down, and we get energy from it. Now this energy can then be used to fuel to energize, to supply the fuel to take molecules and put them back together for building purposes. So the two go hand in hand. Essentially, the catabolism provides the energy to support the anabolism. So we're breaking things down to provide the energy to build other things that need to be built. So there are 4 stages in metabolism, and the first is digestion. The second is the production of acetyl-CoA. I don't know why this S is here. I see it sometimes and sometimes I don't. I'm just going to call it acetyl-CoA. And the fourth is the citric acid cycle. And the third is the citric acid cycle. And the fourth is ATP production. We do get a little ATP production in stage 2. And we also get a little ATP production in stage 3. But the majority of it comes from stage 4. So I'm going to leave this presentation right here. On the next one, I want to focus on this diagram and another diagram that I've made to summarize the process. So thanks for watching.